Everybody, what's up? Dave Whitley here with the Advancing Man Project show again, and I've got my friend Jeremiah Karrasch on the show today. This is actually our third attempt to record something, and a couple of other times things have fallen by the wayside or life has popped up right in the middle of our recording. So I'm really glad that we are able to make this happen today. And Jeremiah is a recovering alcoholic and drug addict turned what he's called a full throttle father, which I think is a fantastic way to describe the way that he lives. He's a stay-at-home dad, spent 25 years dancing with the demons, and now he dances in the kitchen with his kids. He's made a lot of wrong choices, and then one day decided to step and be the best father he could be. And he's celebrating 4 years of sobriety, has um, three kids under five, and a 16-year-old stepson, right? Or stepdaughter? Stepdaughter. Yeah, sorry about that. And he's the host of the Happy Dad podcast. We first met in the a dad's group on Facebook and became friends there. And very grateful to have you on the show. Very grateful to have you in my life, Jeremiah. Welcome to the Advancing Man Project show. Yeah. Let's
As well, Dave.
thank
Really
you
great
for that.
getting to.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about you. I mentioned there that you've had addiction issues and you had some difficulties in your upbringing and all that sort of stuff. Without delving too deeply
Yeah,
into the past, let's talk about like what kind of cycles have you broken that you are not passing on to your kids now, because um, everybody has their backstory and some of it's rougher than others. And I know yours has been very rough. We've talked about that outside here, but I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on like the negatives of the past. I want to talk about the lessons that have been learned from that and how you're taking that forward into the future.
that's the thing. That's exactly what I like. I like that, Dave, because I like to live in the solution. I don't spend a whole lot of time dwelling on the past. I mean, it's there. It helps you. Tools, man. I mean, it's just tools. It's an experience that gets you through today. And it's the things that we learn. Today I actually I keep myself in a pretty strict I want to say a regimen, really. Like in the morning, I wake up religiously 4 o'clock in the morning every day. And as soon as I have my alarm, I don't check my phone, nothing like that. I sit in my bed, I just be. And I think that's a lot of the thing now is like, there's not really a whole lot of just being, being happy that we're here, sitting in the moment, learning to sit in your shit, sit in the
Mhm.
emotions. That's one thing I did, the whole time I was out there, man. I didn't want to feel anything, I was dealing with lots of, you want to talk about generational trauma. We had, not just that, but it's like my grandfather was a World War II vet. And if any of you understand that, handing that kind of trauma down through generations, they were told to go home from a war it was the bloodiest war in history. And they're told to raise family, repopulate the earth, man. What was going on then.
Right.
So that stuff all goes down through the years and next generation, next generation, next generation. And that's where we are here. Our generation, I believe, is the ones that has the tools now, finally, to do this the right way. I was actually just writing a blog before we came on here um about breaking the generational cycles, breaking those things with the tools we have, because our parents, I think they knew, but you got to remember Dr. Spock. Who was that? Dr. Spock, right?
Yeah.
Came out in like the late 1970s. That was
Yeah.
when you and I were kids, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that stuff, that was just like witch doctors back then.
Yeah.
Now it's like we have the tools, we have it and we're actually using them, and that's what's important to me. um I've actually got a myriad of diagnoses now. Before I say this, diagnoses to me are a way to group people so that you understand you're not alone. You know what I mean? So that you have a place
Very
to
well
start with the
said. That's a
recovery.
very well put. I love that.
Yeah, it's a place to start with for your recovery, because I don't think I'm just recovering from drugs and alcohol, Dave. I'm actually in like what I call a life recovery. Because it wasn't just the drugs and the alcohol. Again, I didn't want to feel anything.
Hmm.
I didn't want to feel emotions coming, going. If it couldn't speed me up or shut me down, I didn't want anything to do with it. And that's what makes it different. Is when you're actually going through the entire life thing. I had to change everything, Dave. I had to change it all. People, places, things, what I was doing, who I was talking to. My wife, thank God she stuck around with me. Goodness gracious, you know. But today it's a very happy life. Um, I try to keep the good in everything, man. It's a hard job sometimes. It really is.
Hmm.
I try to look for the silver linings, and when you look at the silver linings for everything, try and find the good in it. And that really keeps me in a positive note. And that's transferring to my kids. Now, you want to talk about breaking generational traumas. Man, my kids, yesterday, I walked in and I took a video of it. Listen to this. My daughter, my older twin, was asking my other daughter, who was upset, what color is this? And she was pointing at something in the room. And what color is that? Can you count to five for me? She was grounding her at 5 years old. She was using grounding skills on her to get her to calm down. Where'd she learn that, Dave?
Hmm.
From us
Hmm.
modeling that behavior. We're teaching them how to live. It's funny because, I remember hearing a lot growing up, we heard a lot of things like boys don't cry, boys don't cry. We heard a lot of things like, I put you here, I'll take you out,
Right.
the roof over your head, you owe me, those things. We heard those things. Now, I don't really believe in that. Our kids didn't ask to be here. We
Right.
made the decision to put them here, right? We made the decision to put them in this. Like, most times, I understand there's problems, things that happen. I'm saying a generalization, but in that respect, I feel that it's us that owes them the future. They're the future. I'm gonna be gone. I'm leaving. I mean, what are they gonna do when I'm gone? I want them to be
Right.
self-sustaining. Be able to take the world by the harness and go to town with it.
Yeah. I agree with that completely. And I think that you're right. The whole Dr. Spock thing is a relatively new development. The idea of children being treated as humans really is a relatively new idea if you stop and think about it, right? I mean, um, child labor laws didn't exist, what, 100 years ago? You had
No,
8-year-old kids working in coal mines and stuff like that, and just all of the stuff that you referenced earlier about coming home from the war. And it's like, okay, you went out and you did all these terrible things and you saw all these terrible things, and now you're supposed to just like set that aside and go raise good humans. And by the way, we don't have any tools to give you to do that. And there's no way
yeah,
that can't be the pebble in the pond that affects stuff, affects us to this day. And we talk about this a lot in the Facebook group that you started. And it comes up a lot when the moderators, when we're having discussions about what we should allow and what we should remove, and all of that sort of stuff. There are a lot of men out there who are still carrying this conception of masculinity that is built around basically using brute force to put anyone into submission to my will, and if you don't agree with that, I will just continue to be forceful until you comply. And that's not an effective way to raise kids. And periodically something will come up with something around, they're talking about punishment even though they use the word discipline. And I know you feel the same way. I'm firmly of the belief that words mean things, and discipline and punishment are used interchangeably, and they should not be. Right? Discipline means to
yes,
teach, punish means to willfully inflict pain. And I don't
yeah.
think that that's a good teaching tool, but that's, we could go into that later. But
No,
these guys
I
will,
agree with
but these guys will come in and they'll just be parroting these things, and the sad thing is they've clearly never stopped to think through what they're saying. It's just been so ingrained into them through fear that if they questioned it,
you.
if they tried to have a voice when they were 6 or 7 years old to question the effectiveness of what they were being subjected to, um, under the guise of discipline, when really we're talking about obedience, right? And it's the difference between
Yeah.
obedience and cooperation to me, which is a huge a huge distinction to make. Like, obedience means that I will punish you if you don't do what I say. And that puts us at
Yes.
odds with the kid, right? Cooperation
Yeah.
is,
Well, I
hey,
mean,
cooperation is, we're both figuring this thing out together, and my responsibility is to teach you how to be a healthy person. So
yeah.
let's cooperate toward that end. And so that way it's both of us, the parent and the child, working together to grow, both of us, right? And I'm real fond of saying that fatherhood is the biggest personal development journey that none of us knew we were signing up for. And
I
I
know.
and I've learned far more from my son than I've taught him is how I feel, and so to miss out on that because we're so close-minded and so subjected to the idea of children to be seen and not heard and all of that sort of stuff. But really, and I say all that to say this. You brought up Dr. Spock. A big one for me, looking back on my childhood growing up, was Fred Rogers. Fred Rogers was revolutionary in the 60s. We don't think much about it right now, but the idea of kindness and compassion and treating other people as people, regardless of their age, was revolutionary at the time. So did Fred,
Yeah,
all that to say, did Fred Rogers have an impact on you in the same way he had an impact on me?
he did, because you remember, man, the 80s was a wild place. And it was, to me, and when I look back on my childhood, my parents had an interesting, they got an interesting deck of cards. My father was a cancer survivor. My little brother fell on fire. They were away at the hospital a lot. My brothers raised me, family, friends, things like that. When my dad was around, it was always, they were dealing with something medical. So it wasn't really like a really big father-son interaction going on. So I remember looking at Fred Rogers, and they would bring in the other kids, and they would show the kids like run around there. And I remember being confused by that,
Right.
when I was young. But as I grew up, I understood what was going on, that the empathy that he was teaching me
Mm-hmm.
was a tool that I needed to survive. Because it's like, I grew up very small, simple-minded town, and I love what you said about the toxic side of masculinity. Just trying to force my will upon you, and it's like, that was a lot of what it was. That round hole, round peg, or round hole, square peg. It doesn't fit. You know what I mean? I just
Mm-hmm.
never felt like I fit in my hometown. That kind of thing. I just always felt that that you could gain more by being nice to people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could never understand that. And then when I come to be a parent, it was like to the nth degree. You know what I mean? Like you said, cooperating. I tell my kids all the time, we're going to get through this. We're not
Mm-hmm.
going to get over it. Don't get over it. I don't think I've ever told my kid, get over it. You know what I mean? If I have, it's a mistake or it was a joke. But that's one of the things that we as parents are leaders. We're like the front line. Our kids are behind us. We're protecting them, right?
Totally.
But eventually we're not going to be there anymore, right? Like the thing is to teach them the things, the proper skills, so that they can have the emotional intelligence to interact with other human beings and be kind. Because obviously the way it's been going, I mean, I kind of feel, I don't know how you feel about this. I feel like we're almost at a cusp right now, almost at a crest, that things are pretty shaky right now, overall. And I think they're heading in the right direction right now
Yeah.
with all this change and this new wave of empathy. And you'll understand that when these people do speak up, like you were talking about, the very macho man mentality, a lot of times it's squashed by other people,
Mm-hmm.
by other people in the room, not even the mods, not even the admins. It's like people will step up and be like, dude, that's not cool anymore.
Right.
So you can see those changes going, and those statistics are changing. And I'm big on statistics, Dave. And it's really interesting. I don't know if you know about this, but one of my main focuses is I'm trying to impact the suicide rate of men.
Definitely.
Because 4 out of 7 suicides are actually are going to be a man, statistically speaking. And then 3 of those 4 are going to be a father, and then 2 of them are going to be under 30. And that's
Wow.
a lot of bad. That's a lot of that's some pretty staggering odds, man. When you think about what you're up against, and you throw in anything else that you might be dealing with at the time, it's like a borderline. That's a 1 in 10 chance. So there's your odds just dropping with everything that could be happening to you, that is influencing you from inside your life. Remember, borderlines are largely, to blame for trauma. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
trauma is largely to blame for having to be in a borderline, and that's inflicted in childhood. That's where I believe that everything, our behavior, our entire life stems from. I mean, this is my theory, that stems from our childhood upbringing, anywhere between up until about 12 years old. And they
Mm-hmm.
say 90% of our time with our kids is out by the time they're 12 years old, man. I
Right.
aim to keep that time and use that time.
Right. And
Yeah.
and the idea of the impact that those years or the environment that a child is in during those years carrying through to adulthood, and the statistics that you just shared, it seems pretty obvious to me that if we look at the trite expressions that are sort of woven into this misappropriation of what masculinity actually is, things like, boys don't cry, or be seen and not heard, or um if someone hits you first, hit them back, and beat the hell out of them, all of that kind of stuff. It seems like that's a way to handle things when the
Yep.
adult needs to be doing things other than paying attention to the child, or they feel compelled to be doing things other than paying attention to the child. But there's no way that anyone with any sense of logic or reason can look at, you know 5, 7, 10 years of that sort of environment for a child, and then fast forward 2 or 3 decades later, and you've got a grown man who is unable to express his emotions. He's stuck in um, a a relationship and a job and a life that is just utterly depressing or anxiety ridden, and ultimately winds up in the place of, I'm just going to suffer through this until I'm gone, or I'm going to be gone sooner than everyone else thinks I should be. And um and I know when I was just as recently as, a couple decades ago, whenever someone would off themselves, more often than not, among the tough guys that I knew, it would be met with, well, he's just a fucking coward. He
Yeah.
just couldn't take it. He's a coward.
I've heard
And
that.
and and I understand where they're coming from, because I understand where they come from, right? But at the same time, I don't think it makes sense to label someone that way, because if you don't see any other way out than permanently being out, then what that's telling me is that you've been conditioned not to ask for help. You've been conditioned not to receive help if someone is offering it to you without you having to ask for it. You've been conditioned that either you can handle this on your own and be a tough guy, or you don't deserve to live. That's
Yeah.
I can see how someone arrives at that conclusion. And I'm so grateful that there are, that awareness is what it is now, and that social media can be used for good, for things like the group that we're a part of, and where we
Okay.
we do have guys that are coming in and shutting stuff down that promotes or encourages that sort of unhealthy um thought process and paradigms in men. And I'm happy to see that it's shifting, and I'm grateful that you are a part of that, and that I get to interact with you and have these conversations with you.
I
and
really
and I
appreciate it.
and I think that there's a whole lot of guys that are sitting around talking about football, or talking about, The Walking Dead, or mad about Taylor Swift or whatever, that are really feeling the things that you and I are talking about, but they're not having those conversations because they were never given the skills nor the permission to open up and be vulnerable, especially to another man, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I think it's imperative for us as dads to break that, and to not let that be the way that our kids see us as men, and for our sons not to grow up to be men like that, and for our daughters not to grow up to marry men like that.
To accept that in their lives. Yes. That's an interesting piece right there. Because I have boys and girls, and you
Mm-hmm.
raise them different, man. You're raising them for different worlds. You want them, ideally, you want them to be in the same world. You really do. But I mean, it's kind of like the wise mind, the emotional mind, and then the logical mind. You want to get as close, you want to get the emotional and the logic. I'm sorry, emotional and logic as close to the wise mind as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to get my daughters and my sons to be as close to the same world as possible, where my girls are not accepting, you know, they're going to know their worth. They're not going to stay in an abusive relationship because they know their value. That's one thing that we don't have, that we weren't taught, was our value. We had to learn that early on, later on in life, by ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? We had to learn our own validation, you know. But the thing about human beings is, when you think about that need, that anger, that want to punish, that want to get it right now. There's a lot of things moving around in there, man. There's the fact that anger is a lazy emotion. It's the first emotion we feel. It gets results. It gets them
Right.
right now, doesn't it? We have instant gratification going. We have instant results. We have and lazy emotions, but it takes patience. It takes courage to dig past that anger to find out what is bothering me. Hurt people hurt people. That is so true. You know, when you think about back in the schoolyard, who was fighting, who was fighting, who was fighting, it was always the kid that was angry at everybody, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It was always the same kid fighting everybody because he was hurt. Probably didn't have a dad, those kind of things, or at least a father figure to look up to, or a dad figure to look up to, and and those things, those are apparent, man. Those things are what really make me question things because 40 years ago we asked it like that's not logic. Now it's not logic to us because we were educated, we understand, we're enlightened, but it's still so out there to me that these things still exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That these moments people don't take to learn empathy and to dig deeper and to learn about themselves. I'm learning about myself every damn day. Every day I learn something new about myself, and usually it's my kids teaching me,
Yeah.
and that's the cool thing. Like you mentioned it already too, where you learn more from your son than what you think you've taught him, and it's true, man. I've learned more about living life from my children and letting go and just being from them than I have anybody else in my life.
Yeah. And
It's
and
crazy.
and to that point, like if you take a kid that's the same age as mine and just send him outside and he goes and he's running around and he's, throwing sticks and jumping in puddles and all that sort of stuff and just experiencing the joy of being a child. How many grown-ups do we know that had that same level of joy in anything that they do? Right? And we can learn about joy. We can learn about happiness from just watching our kids be in the moment that way, right? And I
That's
want to go back and talk a little bit about anger that you brought up, right? Because
yeah,
anger, I like that you said it's a lazy emotion because it gets a result fast. And and you're exactly right. When we're looking at trying to get cooperation out of a kid, and
yes,
and the terms cooperation and obedience don't mean the same thing, but they will get used interchangeably right there, right? When we're trying to get the kids to act in a particular way, um, the if we don't know how to process and regulate our own emotions from having been kids who weren't allowed to do that, and any sort of unpleasant emotion comes up, sadness, grief, disappointment, anything like that shows up, and we're not allowed.
no,
Yeah, yeah, it's scary, it's terrifying, it's vulnerable. I feel unsafe because I wasn't allowed to do that. But anger feels safe because it's proactive and it's aggressive, right? And anger and violence are siblings.
yes,
There's where you find one, you will find the other. And so when I see people, dads specifically, saying things like, "Well, I was spanked when I was a kid and I turned out fine," or if I don't spank my kids, they won't turn out fine. Well, there's a number of things to that we could talk about. First of all, fine's not good enough for me. I don't want to be fine.
no,
I don't want my son to grow up to
uh-uh.
be fine. I want him to grow up to be exceptional. And so
Yeah,
settling for fine again is lazy, right? And it's very much tied into
right.
survival because what I think what's really being said there is I was treated this way and I survived. Not I think that's what turned out fine means. It means I survived and I'm able to function now. But
I don't want them to survive the way I did, though.
no,
No,
no.
no,
And so when
yeah,
anger is our only emotion that we were ever allowed to experience in
yeah,
dealing with anything that's unpleasant, that's going to be our go-to. And you're right,
yeah.
anger gets results, right? If you have a kid who's not doing what you want him to do and you hit him, and let's
They're
make
gonna
no
do it.
and let's make no mistake about it. Spanking a kid is hitting a kid. I don't
Yes,
care. I don't care. Oh, it's just a little pop on the butt. You're still hitting another person, and that in itself is an act of violence.
has the
And
same intent behind it.
say again.
Has the same intent behind it.
It
It has
does.
the same meaning. Yes.
It does. And so, yes, and it will be defended like, well, I spanked him and it worked. Well, it did work. It worked to quell that behavior. It worked to shut that behavior down in the moment. But how much long-term damage does it cause, especially if it's done repeatedly over and over again? And to
Yes.
tie that back to the idea we were talking earlier about suicide, I've often heard suicide referred to as a short-term or a long-term solution to a short-term problem, right?
I've heard that
Spanking a
before.
kid is a short-term solution that creates a long-term problem.
True. And studies, there's like 60 some years worth of data um that supports not being physical or not punishing. And because the main thing that they usually go to is, besides the damage that it causes, is that it only alters the behavior. It doesn't stop the behavior. The child will likely do it again, lie about it, find a way to cover it up to keep from the pain. You're
Right.
teaching the child resentment. We aren't born with resentment, right? We aren't born with that. We're given that by the people who care for us. Resentment. Oh, what's the other one? I can't think of it. I can't think of the word right now.
Guilt.
Spite. Spite. Spite's another one we weren't given. That was taught to us. You know. I think about the kid. You ever thought? Can you imagine your kid being spiteful? Can you imagine that? Do you know there's adults that think their kids are out to spite them? Did you know
Yeah.
that? How
Yeah.
that? Oh,
I'm actually
so
writing that down that we're not born with resentment. It's given to us by the people who care for us. That is a great quote.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And the idea that the kids are, out to get you, especially if they're, under 10, like are you really putting yourself in a position that you are going to say, okay, I am engaged in a psychological, intellectual battle of wills against someone who is 7 years old, and I will not be outsmarted. I will not be overpowered. The fact is you don't know anything about brain development there, right?
yeah,
And one of the ways that I think we can enlighten ourselves on how to deal with things is to understand, first of all, how the brain development actually works. We're born with all the emotions. We're born with the capacity to feel everything. It's already hardwired in, it's programmed in. Our ability to think, reason, to use logic, to problem solve develops over time. And that is what's the prefrontal cortex. That part of our brain isn't fully developed until we're in our 20s. So to
yeah.
expect a
27.
to yeah, to expect a 6-year-old child to be able to reason his way through a problem is like expecting a 3-month-old child to be able to run a 40-yard dash in under 10 seconds. They're just not equipped to do it. They just do not have the physical capacity to do it. And so understanding, first of all, that it's not personal, that anything that gets triggered and comes up is it's just me realizing that part of me wasn't paid attention to when I was that age.
Yeah,
It is a huge part of it.
right.
And so don't take it personally. Realize that this is my thing to work with, right? And so setting that aside, the thing that that I want to talk about, because we've done a lot of like, this is the problem in this conversation we've had over the past 15 or 20 minutes. Start talking about what
Yeah,
can we do as men to rectify that problem and to solve the problem, because a problem by definition must have a solution, and usually it's more than one. So if we're going to look at solutions, the very first thing is to understand what we're working with. We're working with a developmentally different spot in the brain. We're working on the brain that hasn't matured yet. That the hardware is
yeah.
not even in there. The hardware is not developed yet. So we can't expect the software to work. Um, so learning about brain development and understanding where the child is, both in brain development and how the behavioral development is related to that, I think is vital. I think that is one of the most vital dad skills that we can have. One of my favorite books about that is The Whole Brain Child. Have you read that one?
I dabbled in it. I have not read it cover to cover yet.
Yeah. And I recently found out too that the television show, the kids show Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, which
Love
is
that.
which
Love
is a
that.
which if anyone's not familiar with it, it is a continuation of Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood's philosophy,
Okay.
but it's an animated show now. And I saw somebody on one of the social medias talking about that it takes 40 weeks from start to finish, from concept to finished episode, to produce one episode of that show, because they have to write the scripts and do all the animation, do everything that they would do that's just TV production. But also they make sure that every bit of the script and everything that's going on with the characters is not only age appropriate and developmentally appropriate um, for the audience, but that like it lines up with where the kids that age are with brain development, and it's modeling behaviors both with the kid on how to express themselves or what they're going through, happy, sad, getting along, when you have to go potty, stop and go right away, any and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But also how the adults or the grown-ups, which that's an interesting thing. I listened to an audiobook of a Fred Rogers biography, and he was adamant not to use the term parents. He wanted to use the term grown up because not all kids have parents. Some are raised by
Oh,
grandparents. Some are raised by, uh,
I
siblings or aunts
that
and
makes
uncles or whatever. And if you think about it, you never hear the word parent show up. It's always your grown up, which is your
yeah.
caregiver, right? But anyway, like
Now you're mentioning that.
like subtle little things, like if a kid's wanting to talk to a grown up, the grown up in the show will always kneel down and get to the same level to meet them where they are. And I found out recently that all of the psychological aspects that go into that, the head of the I don't know, the company department, the main guy in charge of all of the stuff that's
Yeah.
associated with that is Daniel Siegel, who wrote The Whole Brain Child.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't know that, man. The more you know. More you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, kid. It's Dave, we have all of us as adults, we have motivators, right? We
Hmm.
have things we want, needs, maybe that wants that are into needs. Let's take for example, a Corvette.
Hmm.
Maybe that's material, but I'm just taking you as an example. You want a
Sure.
Corvette, what are you gonna do? You're gonna get up, you're gonna go put your work boots on, you're gonna go to work, you're gonna get your paycheck, you're gonna save your money, you're gonna make sacrifices, you're not gonna eat out, you're gonna do all that, and you're gonna go buy your damn Corvette. You got it, you did it, right?
Right.
That because that was so important to you, right?
Hmm.
Children are just as passionate about their motivators as we are about ours. Theirs are just smaller. A candy bar. That could mean everything in the world to a child in that moment. And all you've done as their father, their person, the one they go to, their grown up, is tell them, no, you have now become a gatekeeper, right? Why? It's not just enough to say no. Okay, it's before dinner. You can't have a chocolate bar. Fine. Why do you want this? And that's where I try to teach a lot, where it comes into that patience. And I really think that patience is the key. Because in the moment when you stop and you don't react that first way you wanted to just say no because I said so, that's too quick. That's too quick. Take time, count, find how long you need to count. Do you need to count to 10? Do you need to count to 5 to get to that point? We have enough patience to go like, why do you want the candy bar? Can I tell you why it's not a good idea for you to have a candy bar? I'd like you to make the right choice, the good choice about the candy bar now. And 9 times out of 10, Dave, they will make the good choice,
They will.
the choice that you, the right choice. They will make it because it's logic and they understand that. But you just have to get there, like you said, getting down on their level, not down to them, but down to them.
Yeah.
Not talking down to, that changes the whole dynamic. Think of a top-down way of management. If you were to teach, think of this: if someone was to come to this world, a humanoid from another planet, a full-grown humanoid, we just had to teach them about how to live as a human. Now they're
Hmm.
stuck here. Would you get a stick and beat them when they cross the street wrong?
No.
When they asked for an ice cream cone because they wanted a fucking ice cream cone, would you take a stick and beat them? No. If they stole something from the store, not knowing that we needed to pay for it, would you beat them? No. Why are we doing this to children? It doesn't make sense to me.
I agree completely.
Just find their motivators. Find their motivators. They're just as big and they care about them just as much as we do. There's times my daughter's throwing a tantrum and I'm reading her. I know her. I'm reading her. If there's tears, it's a real want. It's a real want. It's a real desire. And that's all she cares about. And you can see her go. You can see her fade away where she's looking right through your head because all she cares about is that motivator. Why am I still holding that off? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to get obedience at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Give in. You're dad. You're there to give. You're not a gatekeeper.
Definitely.
You know?
Definitely. I love that you brought up
Uh,
the thing about the Corvette and like what things mean to them at the moment, because a childish desire seems silly to us because we're grown-ups.
yeah.
And that's the very way that we talk about it. That's a childish desire. Of course it is. Well, they're children. They're supposed to have childish desires, right? This is
Exactly.
a story. I don't think I've ever told you this story. A couple years ago, my son's 5 now, so he was probably 3 at the time, 3.5.
Yeah.
Um, he got a water bottle, metal stainless steel water bottle, painted, and it has Spidey and his amazing friends on it. So it's got all this cool Spider-Man graphic stuff on it. Really super cool water bottle. And he got it and he was so excited about it. And he had it for maybe half an hour. Maybe. I'm not exaggerating, probably less than that. And he dropped it because, he's a kid. And when he dropped it, it hit the ground and it put this tiny, tiny little scratch in it, right? Tiny, tiny scratch. You like really had to know exactly where to look and had to have the light hit it exactly right to see the scratch. And he had a full on what we call down south come apart. He fell completely apart, rolling around on the floor, big tears, screaming, crying. And I remember thinking in that moment, there are two ways we could handle this. I can completely invalidate what he's feeling and tell him it's no big deal, that it's just a scratch, to, to stop crying and all the other stuff that seems so prevalent. Or I could do what I did and get down there with him and be like, yeah, you just got this bottle. It's brand new. And because he was yelling, it's ruined. I can never use it again. It's broken. It's ruined. It's destroyed. When it was just a scratch, right? And
Yeah.
and I said, man, you're really, really upset about this because this is brand new and you dropped it and put a scratch on it. And like, I didn't say it, but like the way that I had the conversation with him is like, you did this yourself and you regret it. Like that's where I was trying to frame it in such a way that I
You're
wasn't,
validating.
yeah,
Yeah.
acknowledging that, not like blaming him, but saying, yeah, you made a mistake and you regret that mistake. Or it was an accident and you regret that accident. Um, and I remember telling him, you dropped it. It was an accident. You didn't want that. And now it's scratched and it's really important to you. And it feels really, really, really upsetting to you, right? And he was like, yeah. And then within about just a few minutes, 5 or 6 minutes, he was done with it. He was back on track. And and he
Yeah.
like once he had sort of, once he'd regulated, he's looking at the scratch and decided that it wasn't that big a deal. And you should see the water bottle now. There's like no paint left on it. It's like those little blue splashes on
Uh,
it, right? And but I remember thinking, what a valuable lesson he taught me right there. Because if we go back to the example you gave earlier about the Corvette, imagine you've busted your ass for however long it's been to get this Corvette. And you've put all of this sacrifice into getting this Corvette, and you drive it off the lot and you stop at the gas station, you fill it up. And the moment that you get ready to leave the gas station, you back up and you hit one of those little things that protects the gas pump, and you put a tiny little scratch, just a tiny little scratch on this brand new Corvette. How would that feel?
yes.
You
Same
would
thing.
feel
I'd want to.
you'd want to roll around on the ground and yell and cry and scream too, because it was brand new and now it's got this scratch on it, and it's your fault because you had a tiny little accident. Ultimately, no one else is even going to notice the scratch, but it's there. So like in that moment, that's where he was. And in that moment, he didn't have the ability to think his way out of it. He just needed to feel it. And it
Yeah.
has to be okay to feel that. If I shut those feelings down at that point, let's fast forward 30 years. How's he going to handle regret?
Scratching the Corvette.
Yeah, yeah, or anything that is like, I made a mistake and there was some damage done because of it. How's he going to handle that?
Yeah.
And so developing that skills is huge. I want to ask you this. We haven't talked about this in the Facebook group, but I'm a fan of Dr. Becky Kennedy and the work that she does. Are you familiar with her? She wrote a book called Good Inside.
I've never heard her. Becky Kennedy.
Dr.
I
Becky
know
Kennedy.
I don't. Okay, fill me in. Fill me in. Because I
Um,
got I know the book title. I don't know who wrote them. I'm not. I got ADHD really bad.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like if I can get the book title, I usually remember the color of the book.
Yeah, it's a yellow book, and she's probably in her 30s, maybe early 40s, blonde woman on Instagram, Dr. Becky Kennedy. I'll send you the a link to it. And I get nothing for this. I'm just a fan of her stuff. But I got her book Good Inside and as a Christmas gift actually and read it. And she talks in there under the subject of emotional regulation because I want to make sure that we don't just sit around and talk about guys who don't know how to handle stuff, that we actually on this show offer up some tools that guys can use to help their kids navigate this stuff. She talks about something, a concept she calls um, vaccination for frustration. And
Really?
the concept of vaccination being that, you give a little bit of a pathogen and you develop an immunity to it, right? That's the
Yeah.
whole, idea behind vaccination. And this isn't a discussion about whether or not anyone should vax their kids or anything to do with giving shots. It's just that's the concept of
Yeah.
vaccination. It's you give a little bit of whatever the thing is so that you can get used to doing it. Really, for me, it's about practice and rehearsal in a non-stressful state so that when a stressful state shows up, we can deal with it, right? The old saying of don't wait till you're thirsty to start digging your well, right? Um,
Yeah.
but she talks about like allowing a child to do something and allowing them, even encouraging them or setting up situations where they can become frustrated. Um, and,
Really?
and I'm using
Oh,
frustration. I'm using frustration as the example here, but I'm sure it'll work with anything like that. But allowing them to get frustrated so that they can experience that in small, regulated doses, so that they can then learn how to handle it. And
it's like an
go
controlled.
ahead.
It's a controlled. It's like an experiment. It's like a controlled. It's like a controlled environment, so that
Yep.
you can almost not manipulate the outcome, but you can safeguard the outcome.
Yes. Yes. And
That's wow.
yeah, and I'm a big fan of like regulated doses of risk in play. You know, I
Yeah.
want my son to develop the self confidence and the courage that it takes to climb up that tree and do the thing, or to jump off the thing. And I'm not going to let him do something that's going to hurt himself. But if he's in a situation where there's a little bit of risk there, I'm going to be like, okay, are you aware that tree limb over there is rotten, and if you grab it, it'll break, and you won't be able to stand on it, that kind of stuff. So making him aware of his circumstances, but allowing him to explore it and expand his ability to be comfortable within those things. So all that to say,
Yeah.
I have recently discovered that the one of the most effective and powerful ways to do this sort of regulated dose of frustration is the game Sorry. You remember the game Sorry?
It's really crazy you just said that because my daughter just bought that game yesterday.
That game is one of the best tools I've ever seen for regulating or for helping a kid understand how to regulate emotions. And there's also there's counting and there's like numbers and understanding sportsmanship and back and forth like that. But the game itself is so back and forth. You can be like, I'm definitely going to win in the next three moves, and then two moves later, you're back at the beginning, right? And and to
Yeah.
see him go from literally standing up, I don't want to play this game anymore. I'm so frustrated, rolling around on the floor, crying, I'm never going to win, to draw a card, draw one single card.
Yeah.
And whatever that move is dictates him, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. It's one of the coolest games for that sort of stuff at his age that you can possibly play.
I'll have to do that. What to do with the kids? Because I haven't played that in years, but you're right, man. That'd be perfect. I haven't played that game in years. Yeah, it's interesting, man. Like to me, like I mean, when you're talking about solutions when it comes to helping kids, like I really think that like I employ things like radical acceptance, patience, and then basic grounding skills. I think it just takes that extra moment to put yourself in the kid's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
But see, that's the secret. I think that's the secret to me, to my path was realizing where that point is that I need to stop, reevaluate, get myself together, and then I can move forward with what's going on with the child, because my oxygen mask isn't on, right?
Right.
So I'm not healthy. If I'm angry and I'm screaming and I'm beating things and I'm getting frustrated, it's like it happened this morning on the way to school. I had to stop and count to 10. And my daughters know when you're counting to 10, like, Daddy, you just need a minute. You okay, right? You know, and now they do the same thing. And then look, I'm reading this How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk.
Mm-hmm. I haven't done that one
Great
yet.
book. And yeah, the whole concept around it is putting yourself in the position of the child. How would you like to be treated? Isn't that what we do in life when we say, when we're picking up a role as a manager at our new job? You know, we're going to build our management style off of the things we didn't like, not off the things we liked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're just not going to do things we didn't like. You know, same thing with raising kids. I really think, and when you get to that moment, and you're going to feel it when the hair in the back of your neck starts standing up, that's the time when it's time to stop and count. Take the time, put just reframe it. Reframe is a big word, right?
Yeah.
Reframe it so that you're in this position. You know, you understand that candy is a Corvette.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. I think I posted about this in our group the other day. I was working on some stuff online with a course thing that I'm doing, and I was having some difficulty on the tech end because it was some stuff that I didn't know how to do. And so I'm like having to Google it and then do it inside, build it inside the site, shopping cart stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the joys of online course creation. And I was getting what I was doing wasn't working. And it was a case where I knew that it would work, but I didn't know enough about what I was doing to even ask the correct question to find out the answer.
Oh, I understand that.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, and my son was in the room, and I made some sort of a noise, like a grunt or a big exhale or something like that. And he said, "Why you make that noise?" And I said, "Well, buddy, I am frustrated right now." "Why are you frustrated?" And I explained it as best I could. "I'm working on this thing. There's a problem that I don't know how to solve yet. And I'm trying to figure it out. And everything that I'm doing is not working. And it's just frustrating to me right now. And I'm feeling that." And he says to me, "You know what I do when I'm frustrated?" Which immediately I chuckled and I said, "Tell me." And he said, "I do calm breaths. You want me to show you? It's easy. You just do this." And he starts breathing real deep. He says, "Come on, do it with me." And I
Isn't that
breathe,
awesome?
and I breathe 4 or 5 times with him. And he says, "You feel better, don't you?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do. Probably not for the reasons that you think, but yes, I definitely do." And I'm like, "Thank
Doesn't
you
it
so
blow
much
your
for
mind?
reminding me of that." You know? And
Yes, my
at
daughter's
no
doing it to
point
me too.
at no point was there, "Don't be frustrated." At no point was there, "Oh, don't feel bad." At no point was there, "Hey, stop being frustrated, or you're going to get in trouble," or anything like that. It was just, he
Yeah,
recognized it. It pushed his empathy button. He had a solution that he knew worked based on his own experience, and he offered
at
it up
five
as
years
help
old.
at 5 years old. And so
Doesn't it blow your mind?
yes, yes. And I'm like, this is amazing. And at no point at all did I think anything besides, "You are such an amazing little boy,"
Yeah,
for bringing
that's
that
crazy.
up.
My dog do that. They tell me count, man. Is it? Imagine, think back, Dave, to your life. Imagine if someone had taught you at 5 years old that you needed to take a breath when you got frustrated, how different your life would be today.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, think about that. I mean, we got the tools, man. The thing is we're using them. We're using them.
Yeah. And another thing that happens periodically is, um if something's going on and I'm feeling something, unpleasant like that, and it shows up in my voice tone because we're human and that's what happens. And I'm
Yeah,
talking to
yeah.
him, I'd say probably at least once or twice a month, something like that'll happen. And he said, "Daddy, you're not speaking kindly right now." And when he does that, I just completely freeze in my tracks and say, "Okay, what did I do?" And I'm asking him this. I get down and I'm asking him this. "What did I do or what did I say that came across as unkind? Please tell me." And he can pinpoint it. And he'll say, "When you
Yeah.
said that, like the way your voice was, it wasn't kind." I'm like,
I
Thanks
don't
for
mind
pointing.
that. I don't mind it at all.
I love it, and because to me that's telling me that he recognizes his own worth, he recognizes his own value, and he knows that it's not okay for someone to treat him unkindly or to speak to him unkindly. And he'll do it
Yes.
even if I'm not talking to him. He'll call out me or my wife for being unkind when we talk to each other, which is amazing,
Yeah.
And the thing about it is I know that there are a lot of people that would say, well, he's being disrespectful for calling out to you. He should do what you say. I'm like, no, there's absolutely nothing disrespectful about a 5-year-old child recognizing his worth and holding a boundary on it.
Yes. Nothing at all. I encourage my children to be outspoken. I want them to ask questions. I don't want them to follow. And I mean, that's the things that I want. But I mean, to me, I feel those are endearing qualities. I mean, other people may not think they are. I don't know. Obviously, a Fortune 500 boss isn't going to like someone telling her what's up. But I mean, that's where the child needs to learn to regulate.
Mm-hmm.
But why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't, if my daughter was getting talked to or treated disrespectfully at work, why wouldn't I want her to speak up? I want her to know her worth. I want him to know his worth, you know? Because you know
Yeah.
what? I know what it's like when I know my worth. I spent 30 years not knowing what my worth was. I never want my kids to feel that kind of pain. I already paid the price. Why pay it twice?
Exactly. Exactly. And to the point that you're talking about, that just triggered a thought in my mind. We've talked a lot about various different things that are sort of ingrained in the culture, like boys don't cry or children being seen and not heard. Um, I
Yeah.
don't have girls. I have my one son and that's it. But one of the things that has come up with guys that I've coached with and conversations that I've had is the stereotypical conversation that goes like this: little girl is on the playground, say she's 5, 6 years old. Little boy does
Yeah.
something mean to her, pulls her hair, throws dirt on her, whatever. She comes running over and she does what she's supposed to do. She tells the grown up that this little boy violated a boundary. And
Yeah.
very often the response is, oh, well, baby, he's just doing that because he likes you. Go play. Let's fast forward 25, 30 years, and you've got this same woman who is in yet another abusive relationship that she doesn't know how to get out of because at that age, she internalized, well, if a boy is mean to me, that means he likes me.
Isn't that blow your mind?
Yeah. And what a client that I worked with came to that realization. And I'm like, I'm going to use this. I'm going to shout this one from the rooftops, right? Because we never stop to question the logic there of like, okay, if someone's mean to me and that means they like me, what would they do if they don't like me?
Yeah, right. Ah, flip the coin.
Right? Like if they don't like me, are they going to be kind to me? Probably not. Or maybe so. I mean, maybe if that gets skewed that way, okay, if someone is kind to me, that means they don't like me. So if someone treats me well, that means they don't like me. Is kind of where that
Wow.
emotion can go if it's planted there and never analyzed. One of my coaches a long time ago said that in order to fully understand anything, you have to be willing to question everything. And so I'm like, well, let's question that. Let's dig with that a little bit, right? And so instilling that sense of worth and those boundaries into little kids that way, and body autonomy, you know, it
Yeah.
if
Oh,
if a little boy pulling a little girl's hair on the playground means that he likes her, does that not, if we continue to go down that path, does that not just perpetuate rape culture?
yeah. It really does. It's telling her to accept another man, accept the man fucking with her.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I've never used that. I've never told my daughters that. I've heard it told to them before and I've shut it down, but I'm like, no, 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 no. They don't need to accept that. But I
Yeah.
never really thought about the other side of like where when somebody treats you with kindness, does that mean they don't like me now? That I like what you said. In order to understand anything, you got to question everything.
Well, and if someone treats me with kindness, does that mean they don't like me, or does that mean that they're trying to manipulate me in some way? The only reason you're being nice to me is because you're trying to get something from me, right? And that's pretty pervasive in most adults at this point, I would say too, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So this is a good conversation. I'm glad we finally, got the cameras rolling and got this
Yeah,
going.
I'm glad it didn't go the way I thought. I'm glad it didn't go the way I'm glad I didn't do the script, man. I'm really glad. Glad it out loud. I'm really glad.
Maybe we'll do
That was
another one with the script. I want to jump into rapid fire if that's cool with you.
yeah,
I'll
go
just
for it.
I'll just throw out some questions and you fire off the answer and then we'll be done.
All right,
Um,
cool.
let's open with this. What is one useless talent that you have?
I'm a plethora of useless knowledge.
Give me an example.
Um, the Kinzu Bridge in Mountain Jewett, Pennsylvania, it was considered the ninth wonder of the world at one time. It was a railroad viaduct bridge, and it was built by man. It was a railroad bridge that went across the whole valley, torn down
Huh,
by a tornado about 20 years ago.
interesting.
But it was the eighth wonder of the world. Yeah.
That is interesting. That triggered something for me that I want to ask you if you know this. Do you know the etymology of the word helicopter?
No.
We would think it's helicopter, right? It's
Yeah.
not. It's not. It's helico, which means spiral, and pter, P-T-E-R, which means flight. So it's
Really, I didn't
P-T-E-R
know
like
that.
pteranodon and helico, which means spiral. But we call them a copter because that makes sense to our brains in the way that we separate the syllables and shorten things.
Right.
Um,
Oh, I never knew that.
a lot of useless knowledge.
Yeah.
What's the most valuable piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, most valuable piece of advice. No baby ever died from crying.
Favorite
That is
holiday?
saved my life.
Hmm, very good.
Having twins and 305, when they're all going, man, you just got to leave. I just got to take a minute and get to silence somewhere because they're going to be fine. They're not going to die crying. I'll be right back to them,
Very
you
good.
know?
Very good. Favorite holiday?
Oh, Christmas with my kids.
Yeah, you posted a lot of cool stuff from Christmas last year on in the Facebook group. I appreciate that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Favorite vacation spot?
Hawaii.
Haven't been there yet.
My family, though. I wouldn't do it alone.
Yeah, yeah. Best dad joke.
Oh, best dad joke. It's a long one,
Let's hear it.
but it's a long one. No, I would take too long. It's like a 5 minute joke. But basically, you just tell this story about this dog. I was changing the oil in I was changing the oil in my lawnmower, and I had the gas in there. I was cleaning out the tank. The dog comes over and he drinks the whole pan of gas, and I'm freaking out. I don't know what's going on. The dog's just running around in circles, running around in circles. All of a sudden, it stops and falls over. We couldn't figure out what happened. And it ran out of gas.
That's a good one.
But it goes longer. It's more innate. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
more innate. It's when you get to the end of it, it's like that's it.
yeah. That's very Norm Macdonald.
Yes,
Yeah, I
yes.
like that one. I like that one. Um, I know that you have and I want to make sure that we mention this. You have your podcast that you do, the Happy Dad.
Happy Dad. That's it.
Yeah.
Happy Dad. I'm always live on Facebook. I'm on Happy Dad. Um, yeah. The podcast is fun. I've got out 2 episodes that are dubbed. Working on a third. Life gets in the way. Life gets lifey, so it's not. I don't set a schedule on that. So hopefully I get a new one out here soon. I
Let's
got a
say,
blog that's
curious about that. Like a year from now, what do you want that to be looking like?
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
I hope, and you know what, I say this, but I've already seen it working. My
Uh-huh.
hope is that someone can hear my story and it can give them enough to get through another day and realize that they're not alone. Because that was so imperative to me in rehab. This girl told me, "You're not fucking unique," and it really, really floored me because this whole time I'm thinking like, no one has it as bad as me. No one knows what I'm going through. No one knows it. But hearing you're not fucking unique, I'm like, I could have been offended, but I'm like, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. And that is great because alone's a awful lonely place to be.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. More rapid fire. David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar?
Sammy Hagar.
Fair enough. I can almost always pinpoint someone's age by how they answer that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're my age, it's almost always Roth. If you're under 45 or so, it's almost always Sammy. Um,
There you go.
Last one. What's a cherished family tradition, either that you inherited from growing up or that you created with your family now that you hope will be passed on, 20 generations from now when no one even remembers your name? They're still doing it.
Kinder eggs.
What's
I
that
think
mean?
Kinder eggs like Kinder eggs. They're like the little egg. They have a part chocolate, and then the other half's a little toy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's like my that's like my thing. I hide them and I'll give them to the kids just for fun. There's no point to them.
Right.
It's not a reward. It's not anything. And then we've got this thing where we go like this all the time. The girls are always doing this to me. So,
Making a heart shape.
am I doing to do this when he said I love you?
Yeah.
So it's just things different way.
Very cool. Well, Jeremiah, I appreciate you taking some time to hang out with me today and have this conversation. Want to make sure that
Thank you,
people
Dave.
know where the it's the Happy Dad podcast, and also our Facebook group is the Dads Club. Come join us.
Yep,
We've got
Dad's
what,
Club.
like 55,000 dads on there now, something like that.
Yes, yes. I shoot a lot of different content over my stuff too. A little more open. I don't know. I just Dad's Club's a little more to me closed. I keep that
Sure.
a little more private. But check out my stuff. It's the Happy Dad everywhere, and then I got some good stuff out there. So hopefully it can help somebody out. Somebody feel like I'm so alone.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate you being on. I'm Dave Whitley, this is Advancing Man Project, and thanks a bunch. We'll see you next time.